All right. Thanks, everyone, for coming. I was really a little bit nervous and excited when they asked me to do this as a keynote because this is something I'm really passionate about and I've spent quite a bit of time on in the last couple of years. And in the last few months, it's really become apparent that we haven't done a very good job of communicating exactly what Drupal CMS is, what it's for, and how we see it fitting into the next couple of years in the Drupal space. So just quickly before we start, quick show of hands, who here has tried Drupal CMS? And who has tried specifically the second version 2? So, okay, that's really good, because if you've only tried version 1, forget everything about it. You really want to try version 2, and I'll get into that soon. So I am Pam. I'm the product lead for Drupal CMS, and I'm also the CTO of Technocrat, which is an agency based in Australia. And they have very graciously sponsored almost all of the time that I've spent on this project. I also do spend time out of hours, but they've been really amazing in just supporting me and letting me do what needed to be done for this project. And I also have been a member of this Drupal community for almost 15 years. And this is a photo of me from my first ever DrupalCon talk, which was DrupalCon Sydney in 2013. And another important point, I think, is all throughout the 15 years I've been working in Drupal, I've been working at Drupal agencies. So that's where all of my background is, and that's kind of where all of my context comes from. So just keep that. So today's agenda, just very roughly, I'm going to talk a little bit about why we decided to make Drupal CMS, what it is exactly, what it includes, what the features are, what the highlights are. We're going to try to figure out whether it's working, and then talk about what's coming up next. So the vision. I'm going to set the scene with 2 scenarios that are entirely hypothetical, but also, as we all probably know, very real. So on one side, we have a client, which is a medium-sized nonprofit with a $200K total marketing budget, and they need a new website. They have a maximum of $65K to spend on it. They don't care at all what the CMS is, as long as they can get to their goals quickly and within their budget. And then on the other side, we have a small digital agency that mostly builds sites with WordPress. They used to use Drupal back in the Drupal 7 days, and their developers prefer to use Drupal. But whenever they pitch, they find that they're not winning if the project budget is under 100K. Any lower, and the complexity just isn't really worthwhile. They really only can use senior developers for the projects. They used to have a starter kit, but they don't do enough Drupal projects in a year to make it worthwhile. So they just kind of treat Drupal as sort of a special case where there's additional complexity that would really justify the extra overhead. But I want to also then talk about how we talk about Drupal in general. So this is just these are some screenshots from Drupal.org today. And the messaging that we're sending is, it's the web's most powerful open source CMS. We talk about freedom, we talk about flexibility, privacy, accessibility, performance. No other content management system is this powerful and scalable. This is marketing, but I believe that it's true, and I think a lot of you do too. So looking at where Drupal is today, it's really, really strong for content-heavy use cases and high-traffic sites. 71% of the top 100 universities in the world are using it. Governments in more than 150 countries are using it. And at least 60 confirmed Fortune 500 companies. We think that there are more, but some of them are very secretive, so it's difficult to confirm. So it's been said before that Drupal makes hard things possible, and I think that shows in the stats that I just shared. But it's also been said that it makes easy things hard. And we're seeing this reflected, people are laughing because it's true. We're seeing this reflected in the Drupal project pipeline, right? As I said, under 100K, and it really doesn't make that much sense to choose Drupal because the time to value is high relative to other similar platforms. It's just really unavailable for lower budget projects. And at Technocrat, we see this all the time. You know, we see pitches come through, and if they provide the budget and it's and it's not, maybe 80 or more, it's kind of like, I don't really know. I don't really think we have a chance to win this because I don't really think we can give them what they need for that price. But if we really think it's true, and as I said, I do, that no other content management system is as powerful and scalable, then I think we should probably try to make it available for more people. So the core aim of Drupal CMS is to make the power of Drupal accessible to a far wider range of builders and their clients. By making Drupal the go-to platform for web developers, by making them successful faster. So just stepping back a little bit and looking at the timeline, Drupal CMS was announced in May of 2024 as the Starshot initiative. And then we launched Drupal CMS 1.0 in January of 2025. But this was really a proof of concept. So why I said earlier that if you've tried one and you haven't tried two, I really think you should. Because Drupal CMS 1 was kind of a proof of concept of showing that we could make the architecture work of having this sort of prepackaged version of Drupal that wasn't a distribution, which I'll get into later. But it didn't really have any major innovations. It didn't really change the way we were doing things. It was just making things a little bit easier to start with. But what it did do was provide the foundation for the next leap forward that we knew we needed to take, which was enabled by the release of Drupal Canvas in December of 2025. Drupal Canvas is a drag and drop page building tool that provides a true visual editing experience. And it really introduces a new paradigm for building Drupal sites. So we launched Drupal CMS 2 shortly after that, fully built with Canvas and starting to enable and kind of show people that transformation that we're looking to make. Then just looking forward a little bit, Drupal 12 should be out probably later this, well, it will be out later this year, either August or December, not sure yet. And then far in the future that I don't even want to talk about, Drupal CMS 3. So if you want to know what's in the Drupal CMS 3 roadmap, there is no roadmap. It's not a thing. So I just mentioned core, and I want to talk about where all of this leaves Drupal core. Like, where does Drupal core sit in this paradigm? So Drupal core is the stable, secure, and scalable foundation that Drupal CMS is built on. So Drupal CMS is built on top of Drupal core. It's not something separate. It's not a different version. It's not a sort of either or. Drupal CMS is built on Drupal core. And what this means is that core can continue to prioritize the experience of skilled developers who are building complex custom systems. And Drupal CMS can focus on the less experienced developers and end users, so that core doesn't. And the way we actually put this in the Drupal core strategy is to say Drupal core no longer has to be both a product and a framework, which it was until we started this. And I mean, I think many of us here have probably participated in the endless issue queue debates about whether to add a specific module to core, because it's like, well, any CMS needs this, but that doesn't mean it should be in core. The vision for core is that it's a really small foundation that provides the tools for everyone else to build on. So core provides the framework, CMS provides the product. So what is CMS actually as a product? The sort of one-line pitch is it's a prepackaged starting point designed to make it faster and easier to build sites. That's what it is. What it's not is a distribution. It's built entirely with recipes, which apply configuration once and can be modified from there as with any other Drupal site. So if you don't know what a distribution is, don't worry about this. But if you do know what a distribution is and you have scars about it, please believe me when I say Drupal CMS is not a distribution. You install Drupal CMS, you're getting an out-of-the-box setup that is then yours to modify as any other Drupal. So if we want to kind of visualize this in the context of a traditional Drupal project, we start with Drupal core, we add some contrib modules, we add some config, we add a custom theme, we add some custom. This is really where the complexity comes in, especially at the start, because if you're starting just with this sort of tiny ball of Drupal core, which, as I've just said, is a framework, you're not really getting very much out of the box. So if you're somebody that doesn't understand how all of these pieces fit together, it can be really difficult to go from core to anything useful quickly. So obviously, I mean, these various rings are not to scale. Different projects might rely more heavily on contrib. They might have many more custom modules. You might even not be using a custom theme. But the idea is just that these are kind of the pieces of the puzzle. And where Drupal CMS fits into this model, it doesn't change it at all. But if we think of all of the customizations and complexity as one sort of blob, Drupal CMS is just providing some of that for you to simplify the setup process. That's it. And once again, to sort of just make sure this is really clear, a Drupal CMS site is just a Drupal site that started with more stuff. So it's not divergent from Drupal core. It's no different from any other custom build. You could start a site with core and end up with a site that was literally indistinguishable from Drupal CMS. And similarly, you could start with Drupal CMS and pull everything out and end up with a core site. So that makes it a little bit hard to describe because they're really not different things. But for anyone that's concerned about the architecture and any kind of lock-in and all of that kind of stuff, I just want to make it clear that's not a concern with Drupal. So let's get into something a little more interesting, which is the features. These are some of the features that are included out of the box with Drupal CMS. You might be looking at these things and thinking, well, kind of like, what's the big deal, right? But these are things that most users just expect to get from a CMS out of the box. And none of these things are provided by core, which is fine because, again, it's not supposed to provide these things. But if these are things that you want and you don't know how to get them, then that can be pretty daunting. And I also just want to stress, too, that this isn't a situation where we just grabbed a bunch of contrib modules and we switched them on, and then that's it. So for pretty much every one of these features, we vetted the modules, we tested the modules. In many cases, we worked with the module maintainers to get some UX improvements or new features that we felt would be really useful. And we also provide default configuration for the modules so that you're not just in that situation where, the classic, well, I've enabled the module, but now what do I do? You don't have to really do any of that for all of these. There is more too, and I really wish that I could get into what excites me about each one of these things, because honestly, on each one of these, I think I could point to something that's a little bit extra that we did that's not just the standard. So if you're thinking, well, we already provide all of that for our projects, I would still recommend that you take a look at how we've done it, what we've done, maybe steal some of our ideas. You can actually use some of these as standalone recipes and apply them to your existing starter kit. So it's not really an all or nothing. You don't have to either use Drupal CMS or not. You can take pieces of it and use what works for you. And also, if you think we've done something in a way that, if you have a better idea, please feel free to share. And then one other thing I will just say is, I've been building Drupal sites now for 15 years, and I was completely shocked and humbled to find that there are lots of useful contrib modules that I'd never heard of. And new modules are coming around all the time, and keeping up with that is really difficult. But now we're in a position where people are coming to us and saying, hey, I built this awesome new module, and I think it would be a great fit for Drupal CMS. And they're actually sort of pitching to us. So it's a really great way to stay up to date and keep it innovating. A couple of other things, sorry, I know I'm dwelling on this, but we only use stable versions of modules, with a few exceptions in cases of major version compatibility, but only modules that previously had a stable release, and we don't use any patches. No patches allowed. There's one feature here that I'm going to talk a lot more about, and that's Canvas, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, but I really want to dive in. So this is the Canvas editor. Hopefully you can see this, but if you've been a Drupal user for a long time, it might be hard to believe that this is Drupal. I still find it hard to believe, even though I've been working with it for 6 or 8 months now. I really, really, really can't overstate what a leap forward this is for the project. For so long, choosing Drupal meant a trade-off. You get the power, you get the scalability, you get all the other stuff I've already been talking about, but you had to compromise on the user experience compared with other platforms today. And I can tell you from personal experience, whenever we got asked to do a demo of page building using Drupal, it was always just like, oh, okay, what are we going to do? We're going to set something up with paragraphs. Are we going to use paragraphs layout? Are we going to try to use 50 control modules to make Layout Builder look like it could be something clients could use? And now I get to demo with Canvas. And I've done a few already. And I honestly can't even tell you what not just a relief, but it's actually really exciting to show this to clients and have them be impressed by Drupal. So yeah, again, I just want to say I really believe that Canvas is a foundational shift for this project. It's an uplift that we really needed. And I mean, in some ways, we're sort of playing catch up. But I think we have caught up now. And now everything we're doing is just building up from there. So Canvas really provides something for all of the stakeholders that we're trying to sell Drupal to. So for organizations, it gives you a way of enforcing brand consistency. You bring your own component library, so you're not locked into some other library that maybe doesn't meet your workflows or doesn't meet your requirements. And it also has, of course, Drupal's permissions and governance. For editors, you get a true visual page builder. Drag and drop layouts. I mean, these are not groundbreaking things, but they are groundbreaking things to have sort of out of the box in Drupal. And then for front-end developers, this is also a really big change that we could do a whole talk about this, but what it's essentially doing is bypassing most of the complexity of Drupal's theming and letting front-enders do what they love to do. So they can use the tools they already know. They can use React. They can use Tailwind. You don't have to use React either. You can use any front-end framework, and it basically just works. So it's still early. There's a lot of things that it doesn't yet do, but there is a very large team of people working on this full time, and there are new improvements coming with every single release. Another aspect of Canvas that's maybe a little bit surprising is that it doesn't come with any components out of the box. But again, that's by design. That's a feature. That lets you bring your own component library and customize it entirely. So what we did with Drupal CMS 2 was we developed a design system that we then built as a contributed theme for Drupal CMS to provide that component library out of the box. So this is a really quick way to get started if you just want to get familiar with Canvas, if you just want to try it out, or if you actually want to build a Canvas-based theme. This is a really good starting point, especially in the early days. So it's a complete component library. It's open source, obviously. It uses SDC, so it's still doing things the Drupal way. We didn't want to scare everybody immediately by pivoting to code components. It's built with Tailwind, which I know is polarizing, but it is very easy to use. And we're also doing ongoing development. So we're adding new features, and we would love to hear from people about features that they think it's missing. If you think some of the components are incomplete, please just let us know. We've also tried to lower the on-ramp for new and less experienced developers. So when we originally launched Drupal CMS 1.0, we shipped it with a sort of customized DDev config, and we thought, all right, well, that's that sorted. No, we're getting constant questions about how to get started, because if you've never used DDev, if you've never used Docker, this was still too high of a barrier. So we created an app. We call it the Launcher app. It's a single download, no command line. You can run Drupal fully in your local environment without having to do anything else. So this is a really great way to try Drupal, and it's also a great way to start building a site without touching the command line tools that you can then export later either to hosting or to a more proper local environment. So we also ship with DDev. We provide all of our recommended commands using DDev. So instead of coming in and saying, you can use any of these 10 things, which you still can, but we recommend one. And if you don't want to use that one, that's fine. But we are optimizing the path for that one. And then, of course, again, it's just Drupal. So if there's something else that you prefer to use, you can use that. No problem. We also rewrote most of the user guide for the 2.0 release, both because of changes to the functionality, but also just because of a sort of a shift in focus. And we launched it with docs as code. So it's a lot easier to maintain. It lives in the repo. It's not some random content type on Drupal.org. It's all right there. It's easy to update. And this is definitely an area that we could use more help if anybody out there is really keen to help with docs. Come find me. When we were building Drupal CMS 1, we found that we were making a lot of opinionated decisions that were like, we were losing the generic nature of it and making it sort of less useful for everyone because we couldn't make it generic and also useful. There were too many compromises. So what we decided to do in version 2 was to scale the Drupal CMS itself right back to the CMS only features. It doesn't ship with a content model and it doesn't ship with any other functionality because we created something else that's sort of another wrapper around it called a site template. And site templates are sort of feature complete starting points for websites based on a specific use. So when you're building a site template, you want to think about what's the type of site that I'm trying to support with this? Is it a conference site? So it would be based around event functionality with a schedule, maybe a registration. Is it a nonprofit site? So it might be based around projects and case studies and donations. And the design also can accordingly sort of be appropriate for that use case. So they're ways of setting up sites. They're not distributions. They're still based on recipes. So it's still a one-time application. It should include content types. So basically your data model, the contra modules, and the config, which is sort of like the functionality. And then a theme that we recommend is Canvas compatible because that's really what makes it quick, and some default content. So if we go back to the sort of the project makeup, site templates still fit into this, but they're just providing even more and filling in even more of those gaps to start with. When you install Drupal CMS 2, you can choose from a list of site templates. And these site templates are for a variety of use cases with pre-built configuration and functionality for that specified use case. So the templates right now that we have are some for education, some for healthcare, some for nonprofits, events, and of course, from our friends at Morph, Convivial Gov for government. So right now, the templates that we have are relatively simple in scope. There are a few reasons for that. One is that we wanted to get them done quickly. And one is that Canvas is still in its early days, so there are some limitations in what you can do. So we expect that to get more advanced as Canvas and the related ecosystem advances, but right now they're pretty simple. I'm going to highlight a couple of these templates quickly. So Haven is a site template that the Drupal CMS team built, designed for a nonprofit use case. So it's built on Drupal CMS. It uses a theme that's forked from Mercury called Haven. It comes with the standard Mercury component library with some modifications where we needed. So we added some new components. We changed some of these existing components. It also includes the content types we thought were appropriate. So blog, project, person profile, utility page. It includes content listings for all of those content types. And it also includes some easy to install add-ons for donations, which I'll go into a little bit more detail about later. And then the other one I want to show is called Mercury Demo. So this is a really, really simple site template, but it's basically designed as you could think of it as sort of a showcase site. And it's using Drupal CMS just with the default Mercury theme. So it includes the same Canvas component library. The site template itself doubles as documentation for Mercury's components. But the reason that I wanted to highlight this was from when I had the idea for it to having it finished was a matter of hours. So the way these site templates work, it's so simple to create a new site with them. And it's even simple now to create a site template. So back to the project makeup. If any of you were thinking, well, this looks like Drupal CMS is eating my project budget, I just want to address those concerns. I said originally that those circles are really not to scale. So I don't think any of us are really building projects where a site template would make up any significant portion of the functionality that we're building. So if we really looked at the scale, it would probably be more like this, right? You have little tiny pieces that you're getting help with at the start. And I mean, to put some really rough numbers on it, Drupal CMS might be 5 to 10K of project work. A site template might provide another 5 to 10K. Who knows? Maybe later there will be more. But I think the key thing that I want to stress is that the idea here is not to shrink project budgets. The idea is to make the economics work for smaller projects by making it faster to realize value with Drupal. So if we go back to the earlier examples that I gave, in this new world, and granted, we might not quite be there yet, but this is certainly the goal. We have an agency that now can leverage Drupal CMS and Canvas to realize that value faster and win projects for $65K using Drupal. And then on the other hand, we have the client who loves the Canvas editor. They love the integration options. They love that they're getting all of that power, that scalability, that reliability from Drupal. They're starting with a really solid foundation for their future growth, and they didn't have to spend more than they wanted in order to get that. So then just going back to the project funnel, as I said, what we're starting to do is make the economics work for smaller budgets. One really important thing I want to note here is that this doesn't mean that any of you who have agencies should start doing lower budget projects. If you want to, great. If you don't want to, please don't think that that's what we're saying. What we're saying is that we think it's really important that it is possible to do Drupal projects for lower budgets. We think that that's really important for the future, both of Drupal and for the open web. And then lastly, I also do just want to say that many of these smaller sites will probably go on to become bigger sites. So that's good for even those of us who only want to build bigger sites. All right, so is it working? I just want to caveat by saying it's only been 3.5 months since we released Drupal CMS 2. So we don't have a lot of data yet, being totally honest. But we are seeing some acceleration. So Drupal CMS and site templates obviously cut setup time dramatically. The time to value is significantly reduced with site templates plus Canvas. Even I personally offered to build someone a Drupal site. Someone was complaining that they didn't have a good CMS behind their site, and I volunteered to do it. I sat down on the couch. I spun up a site with Drupal CMS and Mercury, and I had a functioning site within about an hour that was almost on par with their static site. And the thing that shocked me most was not necessarily that I was able to do that. It was that I even had the thought, oh, you need a site quickly? Let me use Drupal for that. I mean, 6 or 8 months ago, that just never even would have crossed my mind. Another thing that we're definitely seeing, and this was one of the goals we had, was some consolidation. So by choosing the modules that we chose for the sort of 80% use case, we're seeing consolidated effort around them. Contribution is boosted, attention on them is boosted. The modules themselves are improving. We're seeing faster compatibility with major releases. And we did speed it up for 11 because we launched Drupal CMS in 11, and then with 12 coming out later this year, we will definitely be pushing strongly and helping with those major, the popular modules to get them Drupal 12 compatible faster. Obviously, then by focusing the effort on one approach, we can drive more contribution there. So anyone that's ever tried to do something like, my client wants to be able to clone content, and then you look and there's like 5 modules that do it. They all do it in a slightly different way. That decision making is no longer required if all you have is a simple use case. That's not to say that some of those other modules are not needed, because some of them do more. But for the basic use case, all of that is sort of consolidated into one. We are hearing stories of adoption too. I mean, again, in 3 months, that's not very long to get like many actual outcomes. But we did recently hear from a large university in the US that is moving 300 WordPress sites to Drupal CMS. And that decision, they were very clear, was driven by management based on the direction that they saw each of these projects heading. So Drupal CMS really was giving them the confidence to invest in Drupal and bet on that moving forward. And then we also are hearing from a lot of, especially smaller agencies, who are saying, Drupal CMS is brilliant for us because of the reasons I outlined earlier. And they have a small team. They can't really spend the money to build up their own starter kit. So it's really helping them move quickly. We're seeing a little bit of sort of discovery and rediscovery. We have some former Drupalers who are hearing the buzz about CMS and Canvas and coming back to find out what it's all about. And we also see relatively frequently developers coming into the Drupal Slack who are saying, hey, I'm a WordPress dev, and I'm a little bit frustrated with where things are in that world, so I just wanted to come check this out. So that's very encouraging. We're also seeing some commercial evolution. So Drupido and FlexSite are 2 brand new companies that have sprung out of Drupal CMS existing. So they're betting their business on the fact that there is going to be a market for a SaaS style or just really basic Drupal CMS hosting. And then, of course, Acquia Source is built on Drupal CMS. So I think this is really critical to the success of this initiative, because in the very early days of Drupal CMS, I spent a lot of time testing shared hosting. And after a lot of time and hesitation and frustration and difficulty, I just came to the conclusion that it's not worth pursuing. Because even if we were able to get Drupal CMS to work perfectly on those platforms are terrible. They're horrible to use. They're very cheap, but it's just a very unhappy experience. So what I thought then was, I really hope that some hosting companies pop up and sort of provide that more WordPress style experience where it's kind of like, it's a lot easier to use, it's tailor-made for Drupal, and you don't have to figure stuff out yourself. So the fact that we've got 2 completely new companies, plus, of course, the backing of Acquia's funding, and that's really encouraging. And I've also heard from at least 2 hosting companies here this week who are pursuing the idea of launching a Drupal CMS. And this is something that I literally added like 10 minutes ago, because somebody shared this chart with me that I don't want to make too much of this, obviously, because these stats are all over the place. But if we see, starting in January, there's a big sort of increase in Drupal sites. Again, I don't want to make too much of this, but it is exciting to see that trend starting to reverse. So, we don't have a lot of raw market data yet, but what we are definitely seeing is a shift in mindshare and Drupal being back on the table in places that it had gone. So really quickly, going to talk about what's next. We have a roadmap that we're working on for the next 6 to 12 months, and a revised strategy that we're hopefully going to be publishing very soon. Had to talk about AI. I made it this far, but I had to talk about it. So part of our revised strategy is going to be more around focusing on workflows and processes being operated by agents, and while keeping humans in the loop. So what we really don't want to do is to replicate what the general purpose AI tools do really well. And there's frankly a lot that you can already do with Drupal and AI that we really don't need to do anything from a product perspective. That doesn't mean we won't. I think we will, and I think it's really important. What we want to do is focus on what is uniquely valuable when you have AI in a CMS context, right? You have a known data model, you have content structure, you have workflows, and you have site-specific configuration. So content type creation, view configuration, structural tasks that are assisted by AI. But what we really want is we want in-context assistance that surfaces where you're working, not something that's a disconnected chatbot where you kind of have to know what you even need to ask it in order to be useful. And then I think this is another key thing, that Drupal CMS, we want to be the enterprise-ready answer to vibe-coded platforms. So when you vibe-coded a site and it's working really well and your business is taking off, but you need to scale beyond 1 or 2 people, it needs real governance, clients, it needs reliability, it needs security. We want Drupal CMS to be the sort of logical place that a lot of those projects land. Another priority for us is a site template marketplace. So if you went to Murray's talk yesterday, he provided a lot of really valuable insights into that. Right now, we have a listing for site templates on Drupal.org, but what we really need is a lot more. We need capability to try the templates. We need capability to purchase them on Drupal.org, and then ideally to provide a pathway to actually host those sites. So the Drupal Association is investigating options for this, and we hope to have a solution in place before DrupalCon Rotterdam in September. And another goal we have for September is that we want to have more than 100 site templates available by then. Based on the number that we have now, that might not seem realistic, but I would love to encourage some of you to give it a try. And I'm going to just do that by showing you, these are 5 templates that I either made myself or made with the assistance of other people that are all using Mercury. So this is all the same base theme. All we had to do was change the fonts, change the colors, change the border radius, and maybe make a few other modifications. But I mean, I'm telling you, you can get a design from Claude Design and then have a functioning Drupal CMS site using Canvas in a matter of hours. Another priority that unfortunately doesn't usually come up that much in this region is multilingual. So Drupal itself has full support for multilingual, but the newer parts of this infrastructure don't yet. So the Drupal CMS installer is not translatable yet. Recipes, there are aspects of recipes that really need to be translatable for them to be useful that aren't yet. And then Canvas doesn't yet support translating content. But that is on the roadmap for this quarter. And then the recipes and the installer we're definitely working on. And the other thing, just to say briefly, is that Drupal's multilingual support is excellent, but it is quite difficult to set up. So I'm not going to remotely go into detail here, but the top flow is the current process to set up a multilingual site. There are 5 decision points and a lot of things to do. And what we'd like to do is implement this updated flow, which is, instead of 5, it's 2. And it's much more of a wizard where it's guiding you through rather than you having to kind of figure out where you're going. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is integrations and add-ons. So site templates can provide a curated list of recommended add-ons that are suitable for the use case that they service. The list of recommended recipes comes from an external source, so you can update them without having to ship updates to your product. It's just a static list that gets pulled in by Project Browser. So this is Haven's recommended add-ons, and it includes add-ons for MailChimp as well as a couple of donation options. And I'm going to really quickly run through them just to show you the power of this new functionality. So in the old world, if you wanted to integrate your site with MailChimp, it was a fairly tedious process of trying to figure out what to do next. So you found the MailChimp module, you installed it, you authenticated your site with MailChimp, then you had to figure out why you couldn't do anything, then you realized you have to actually install another module, which is called MailChimp Signup, then you had to figure out what to do with that, then you had to create a sign-up form block for every MailChimp audience that you wanted to create a sign-up block form, and then you had to actually use the block somewhere. But we worked with the maintainer of the MailChimp module, which is a company called ThinkShout in the US, to create a recipe where you click apply, it prompts you to authenticate your site with MailChimp. Once that's done, it creates automatically a block for every audience that you have in MailChimp, and then that block becomes available anywhere you use blocks. So if that's Canvas, it's available in Canvas, and if that's something else, it's there. So this is just to say that takes like maybe a process that might take you an hour or two, and takes it down to like under 2 minutes, because it's one step and then another step, and that's it. And then another really good example of this is Stripe. So this is an ecosystem, Stripe and Webform, there's so many modules and there's so much functionality and there's so much that you can do. You just have to figure it out. And once again, it's this process of kind of like, okay, I have this thing, but now what do I do? Okay, I have that thing, but now what do I do? And what we did was we created a recipe that literally you click install, it prompts you to enter your Stripe API keys. And the recipe then generates the it configures Stripe, it generates the web form, it plugs in all of the general defaults that you might need. You go into your Canvas page, you select the web form from the autocomplete, and then you have a donation form in your page. So what's next on that? Well, there are almost 1,500 modules compatible with Drupal 11 that are categorized as integration. Any of these would be good candidates for a recipe that will simplify the process of integrating. So even if you're just thinking, well, there's this integration that I have to do every 6 months, and I always forget what I did last time, I would recommend creating a recipe, even if you just keep it for yourself. But it would be nicer if you open sourced it and posted it on Drupal.org. So I'm just going to finish with something else that's sort of famously on Drupal.org, which is that Drupal is built and maintained by a global community, by a global open source. And this applies to Drupal CMS as well. The success of this initiative and all of the things that I described as our roadmap is entirely dependent on community contribution. I do want to recognize the contributions that we've had from local folks like Morph for building the convivial site template, from Sparks for helping us out with the Haven theme and the new one that we started on the Contrib Day, and Bryn, where's Bryn? Animation, I forgot to call it out, but Haven theme now includes animations out of the box, which I know that doesn't sound like a huge deal, but for a Drupal Contrib theme to provide modern JavaScript things is kind of exciting. So if you're wondering, what are things I could possibly help with? There are a lot of. The actual Drupal CMS team is really small. There's just a few of us. And They're mostly located in really inconvenient time zones for me. So, if I can convince anyone in this room to help out in any way, that would be really helpful for me so that I could have some normal time meetings. These are just a couple of ideas that I came up with really quickly. There's so many other things, like if there's anything that you think you're kind of remotely interested in or your skill set and you're wondering whether you can help, I think you probably can. So please come find me. If anyone wants to do a BOF about any of these things, I'd love to show some people how you can easily create a site template. Just come find me. I'd love to schedule something in. So with that, I offer you two options. If you haven't tried it, please do. Drupal Forge is currently the fastest and easiest way to do that. There's nothing to download, and it installs in less than 2 minutes. I have provided a QR code because it does work on a phone. If you've never tried Drupal on a mobile phone, now's your chance. And if you have already tried it, we'd love to just hear from you. If you want to help, or if you think we've done something, we chose the wrong module, or we missed out on some functionality, just let us know. I mean, that's still helpful, even if it might not seem like it. Any feedback is useful. So please come join us. Come find me. Talk to me. Yeah, love to hear from you. That's all.